Azure provides many different storage options for us to store our data. We are going to take a look at them at a very high level in this video. To use any storage options provided by Azure, we need to have something called storage account. Storage account is more like a namespace. This will have a unique name, and because this has a unique name, you'll be able to access the storage account across the internet using HTTP or HTTPS. And within the storage account, you can have blobs, files, tables, and even queues. Let's talk about each one of these in detail. Let's first start with Azure Blobs. Azure Blobs is a type of storage in which you can store massive amount of structured or unstructured data, and you can store any type of file. There is no restriction on the file extension. You can store any type of file, and you can even store files that are really large. And each of the items that you have stored within the Azure Blob Storage can be accessed using HTTP or HTTPS URL, because we have a unique URL for the storage account, and then we will also have a unique ID for the files stored within this Azure Blob Storage. Putting them together, we'll have a unique URL to access each of the files that are stored within the Azure Blob Storage. Normally, Azure Blob Storage is good to store images, audios, videos, backup data, and any similar data. When we are storing files within Azure Blob Storage, we can choose one of these 4 different access tiers, and these access tiers defines the cost as well as the latency of accessing those files. The first one is called Hot. You'll be choosing this access tier for files that are being accessed frequently. You want to access them quickly. This is not the cheapest, but this offers the lowest latency. Next one is called Cool. This is used for infrequently accessed data, and when we are using Cool tier, the data must be kept at least for 30 days. This Cool access tier is going to be cheap, but it comes with some latency. When you want to access your file, it is going to take some time. The next one is called Cold, and this is very similar to Cool, as in this is going to be used for infrequently accessed data, but the difference is the data stored in Cold access tier must be kept at least for 90 days, and this is actually cheaper than Cool, but it comes with slightly longer latency as well. The last one is called Archive, and Archive is used for rarely accessed data. This is by far the cheapest option, but it comes with the really high latency. Sometimes you even need to wait days to access the data. But if you don't want to access the data quickly, but you want to keep it for a really long time at a cheap cost, then this is an option to go with. Let's move on to Azure Files next. Azure Files are nothing but your network shared drive, but over the cloud. You can create SMB or NFS shared drives, and you can attach that to your computer, and you can use it just like normal network drive. It supports both SMB and NFS. SMB is supported in Mac, Windows as well as Linux, but NFS is only supported in Mac OS and Linux. And because this works just like a network share but over the cloud, this is by far the easiest option for someone to use. Let's move on to Azure Queues next. So Azure Queue is nothing but a pub sub service. So you can actually publish data in one end of the queue, and on the other end, someone can subscribe to that and dequeue the data and do something with it. So that is what Azure Queue is. And this service integrates with other services within Azure, which means when you add something within this queue, you can actually trigger some operation in some other services within Azure. Okay, so this will be handy if you have such a scenario. The next storage option is called Azure Tables. This is for storing structured or semi-structured data. So think of this as a cheap alternative for Cosmos DB or other NoSQL databases. Here you can store structured or semi-structured data in a tabular format, and you can read and write to them as you like. Now, if I go back to the beginning, we have another storage option called Azure Disk. Underneath, it uses blob storage, but Azure Disk is just like a disk. It supports both SSD and HDD. This is a virtualized disk that you attach to Azure virtual machines. When you have virtual machines and if you want to have a storage disk, then you'll create this storage option called Azure Disks. Then you'll attach it to the virtual machine. But underneath, this still uses the blob storage. Okay, but it is all abstracted from you. But underneath, the disk image itself is stored as a blob file. Okay. So this is a grand tour of different storage options available for us to use within Azure. I hope this video is useful. Thank you.